Okay, let's see where you're at with understanding the path. You know, there's 3 identifying marks of Aikido. Just 3. If you're not doing these 3, you're not doing Aikido. Okay? Who can name them or one of them?
Reconciling yin and yang?
No. Takamusa Aiki. Okay, so it is the reconciliation of Aikido form with Aikido non-form. Okay, that's the 3rd one that I list.
Form? The first one be form?
No.
Kokyu and Aiki?
No. Kokyu and Aiki are internal aspects, right?
Hi.
So do you mean that? Like the skill in Kokyu and Aiki?
Yes.
So skill in the internal aspects of the art.
Hi.
Okay, that's number 2.
Hi.
So if you do not gain that skill, you're not doing Aikido. Okay? So meaning you can do Aikido as any Jiu-jitsu. You can do it externally, but it's not Aikido. Okay?
Hi.
Some Jiu-jitsu, they're all external. Okay? But Aikido has an internal aspect to it. What's the first one? And the most important one?
Non-contestation.
No. Non-contestation is an identifying mark of all Jiu-jitsu. All Jiu-jitsu have non-contestation. And in fact, every single martial art has non-contestation, right? Even the military arts, okay? There's a mitigation of risk. It's only the civilian who has the fantasy of overwhelming with superior firepower. Do you see that? It's always better to have superior firepower, but to use it in a way that you mitigated risk. That is much better use of superior firepower. Do you get it? So, for example, I have tanks, and I can charge up this beach against all of your forces and stuff, but it would be much better if I flank you with these tanks. Do you see that? And so even in that context, you mitigate for the reduction of risk, okay? So that's non-contestation, is how you mitigate for the reduction of risk. And so it's only the fantasy of video game mentalities that you keep resetting, and that denying the reality that people are dying because you keep freaking trying to overpower someone. Do you understand that? So non-contestation is really just a martial strategy, but it is a mark of all Jiu-jitsu. Okay? So Aikido does have non-contestation because it is a Jiu-jitsu in it. It does do it externally, but it also and predominantly does it internally through Aiki and Kokyu. Okay? Well, then the first one is the mystical state. Okay? Skill in gaining and maintaining the mystical state. What is that? What is that? Okay? Well, it is what has been spoken about for centuries throughout the history of human beings across cultures. Okay? So in modern terms, we are going to say that it is the ability at will, regardless of environment or circumstances, to deconstruct what we call the first mind aspect. So that ego tripartite. When you do that, what we call the second mind aspect kicks in. That is the mystical state. What is it? It's not the first mind aspect. It's not dichotomy, it's not fear, right? It's not preference and avoidance. It just is. There's no sense of the subject-object dichotomy, because there's one more dichotomy that goes away. It's not, I don't move the sword moved. Okay? So again, the 3 marks of this art is the mystical state, skill in Kokyu and Aiki, and Takamusu Aiki. Skill in Kokyu and Aiki require the first mind aspect to be deconstructed. You cannot do it. You can talk about it, but you can't do it. Or you can make it now external, so it's all about leverage, but that's not it. And Takamusu Aiki is the same thing. You cannot do the reconciliation of form and non-form from the first mind aspect. It cannot happen. You can't do forms at the speed of life in combat. The form just is. So towards the cultivation of these markers, we do all kinds of practices in the dojo that are aimed towards the deconstruction of the first mind aspect, the deconstruction, the cessation of the ego tripartite. So we have etiquette. We have the sensei-deshi relationship. We have meditation. We have servitude practices. Do you see? We uphold the virtues of humility and valor, faith. Do you see? And we culturally shame pride, fear, all forms of disengagement, retreating, cowardice. Right? If you think about it, we're not like loser, but a glance from me when you did it is enough to go, no. Do you understand? It's an old tool of cultivating virtue in human beings. So you have to have both the lesson and the negative lesson. So shame is what you call that. But we also have some very, what your mind wants to see almost different from all those other practices. What your mind wants to see is some very direct ways of gaining Kokyu and Aiki or Takamusu Aiki, because they'll work on the technical things. Okay, but I'm telling you, you're better off prioritizing these other practices because they go deeper, because they have less allowance for deviation than working on technical things. But our technical curriculum is lined up towards these three markers, okay? And they are the following. You have to have Kihon Waza. And Kihon Waza is a ritual where everyone does their prescribed role. It is pure prescription. But it's prescription in those three markers. Do you see? So it's not any kind of ritual. It's an as-if ritual. You're going to do the technique as if you have access to the mystical state, as if you have Kokyu and Aiki, and as if it is a reconciliation of form and non-form. From there, we have micro-drilling. In micro-drilling, we're going to take segments or sections out of the Kihon Waza to focus in on those parts only. But we're doing it for the purposes of those three markers. So for example, in the last class, they're trying to check our hip as we're going from clearing the guard to side control, right? And your ego tripartite wants to push back on what's pushing on you. You cannot deconstruct it. You're in an antagonistic relationship with the person that you're trying to control because you're trying to control them. So what we did is we just pulled that part out and we said, let's see you release from this antagonism. Toward what end? Toward deconstructing the ego tripartite and getting yourself out of this dichotomous reality. We just focused on that. And with the goal, as I said, if you're doing it right, an observer would never know that they pushed on me. Do you remember that? You wouldn't see it because I never contested it. You would think he's letting me by. You see? Those are micro drills. But they're aimed towards these 3 markers. The next level, because you're moving towards those 3 markers. So for example, you're moving towards Takamusa Aiki. The next level is what I have landed on calling Intensified Kihon Waza. It's something different than the first one. In the first one, it's an as-if ritual. Intensified Kihon Waza is really a kind of Jiu-jitsu Waza, where you don't really have a Naga and a Uke, although you will recognize the Naga and Uke roles from the Kihon Waza, but you don't really have a Naga and a Uke. You have one person who is trying to knock the other person out of being able to do the form. And that other person is trying to knock the other person out of being able to do the form. It is, in a way, a kind of competition. But you can only compete with the 2 sides of the form. Do you understand? Okay? So, some of the ways it comes up at first is you're going to increase the speed and the strength of the moves. Okay? But you're going to find that when you get with someone skilled that can actually do the form, you're going to need these other aspects. You're going to need that mystical state. You're going to need the Aiki and Kokyu. Do you get it? Because you'll just lose over and over and over again. Okay? So again, to summarize, you're both competing against each other, but with the form, with the goal of knocking the other one out of the form. Okay? And this requires that you start freeing yourself from the form. And that is going to require that your first mind aspect is deconstructed. Okay? Some other things come up that don't come up in Kihon Waza if you're doing Kihon Waza incorrectly. So, when you're in the second mind aspect, there cannot be fear in you. Okay? And so, there should not be contestation in you, because that's a fear response. Do you understand? Well, as we do now, an overt competition, if I was already in a fear state in Kihon Waza, and I was already contesting because I was existing dichotomously, this is really going to trigger you. Okay? And you're going to see the downside and the inability of the first mind aspect to function at speed of life levels, at combat engagement, in combat engagement environments. It just can't function. Okay? It's always behind. It's always early. It's always too far in. It's always too far out, do you see? And all those are openings for the other person, as they would be for an opponent or an attacker. Okay? If you're doing it right, just like Kihon Waza, you'll be in the mystical state. You'll be in a kind of ecstatic state. There's a pleasure to it. Just like any time in the mystical state, it will become difficult, and it should be, to want to come out of it, because the whole world makes sense from there. Even this chaotic environment of someone trying to hit me with a stick. Okay? And you may get hit with the stick, but you won't experience that the same way. But if you're in the first mind aspect, getting hit with a stick is going to continue to trigger the first mind aspect, and you will only get hit with the stick more. This is how Intensified Kihon Waza works. Okay? When this happens, you can't get out of the first mind aspect. When that happens in Intensified Kihon Waza training, you should be motivated to go back to Kihon Waza and start looking more for these three aspects. This Takamusaiki aspect, this internal aspect, and this cessation of the first mind aspect, the ego tripartite. Okay? Not all of us are there, obviously. Okay? So you always, generally, you don't do Intensified Kihon Waza for a long time. And some people, there's no point in doing it. Okay? Because they're just so far still with as if rituals. Okay? But I think our two advanced people here can do it without killing you. And you'll see that that would have killed me. And then we can use it to observe ourselves through this lens that I just laid out for you. Do you understand? You also come to learn some martial strategies and tactics that are not as readily visible in the Kihon. Okay? So for example, a beginner mistake without any combat experience is you always try to rush your moves. But when you're competing against someone, you get more juice out of slow down their moves. Okay? So as you rush your move, you don't preoccupy me with your previous move. And I'm faster. You get as the opponent. So for example, in the Makio Tosh, you do it half-ass, Kirigaeshi is coming way faster than you can do the technique. Do you get it? Or another one, angle of deflections always appear to work. You see? Because we always imagine that we're strong enough to do it. But in weapons work, angle of deflections are too slow. They're way too slow. It's not just that as I always say, if you're strong enough, it'll work. But there's always weapons aren't involved. Okay? So you're going to find out that your angle of deflections, they don't work, not only because they might not be strong enough once someone is trying to knock you out of the form, but they'll always be too slow. They're always too slow. Okay? You're also going to see that the positioning and weight distribution of your body is not as arbitrary as you once thought it was, because it will delay between the moves. Okay? And if you can't do your attack in the middle of my attack, you're not doing your attack. The other guy's going to knock you out of the form. Okay? Now, you shouldn't let the word intensified only mean power and speed. It doesn't mean that. So, as for example, if I slow your move down enough, I don't have to move that fast. Do you get it? And if I am trying to move faster than you, I might not slow your move down at all, and then in terms of relative speed, I'm faster than you. Do you see? So I wouldn't go with just try to speed up on power. It's all about good technique. Okay? So let me just demonstrate, and you'll see I'm not going my athletic fastest because it's still a training environment. After Intensified Kihon Waza, we have play, And then you also have Jiu-jitsu Waza. Okay? And Jiu-jitsu Waza has become over time itself very ritualized, but that's Kihon Waza. In Jiu-jitsu Waza, it's like you do you, I do me. Do you get it? It's not you run at me like this, and then I do these 3 or 4 moves. That's not Jiu-jitsu Waza, okay? That's just Kihon Waza done without breaks between the reps. It's not Jiu-jitsu Waza, okay? Jiu means freedom, so it's free technique. You do you, I do me. Got it? So after Intensified Kihon, we still have play, and we still have Jiu-jitsu Waza moving us into Takamusa Aiki. Okay? So Intensified Kihon is still a ritualized, so to speak, training environment. Got it? So that's why you are restricted to defeat with the form and not be defeated with the form. So if you start going off the rails, that is all, you can't do it. It won't do what it needs to do. Okay? All right, so I'll demonstrate some. Okay, so we're going to now take, we did the as-if ritual of Kihon, and we did it embryonically. So I came here, he came there, and then I came here, more, and then. Some of the things you're going to notice is you see there's an angle of deflection in there. Did you see it? So I came here, boom! And again, that's not going to work. So I have to get rid of the angle of deflection. That's why I called that embryonic, because that's not Makyo Tosh. Okay? So I do the move. And I'll give you some of the mind that I'm thinking, okay? In my mind, I want to be offense. Like, I'm not going to trade blows with him, okay? But obviously, he took a strike and I took a strike. But in my mind, I'm shutting him down. You get it? From the start, okay? So I'll do a different mindset. You see how I went backwards? Instead, I'm going forward. And I smother his strike before it comes out. And you can see the timing too. The ski is hitting him right as he's nearing the end of the atosh. Do you get it? So he can't get out of it. So this would be incorrect. He's coming up. He's going to counter me. Okay? Let's start there and let's go. You can see I'm not going full speed, but it's intensified. Okay? Go. Okay, so we'll watch. You keep going. Okay, so she got enough of the Suba and it knocked the sword into Rain's leg, and Rain cut her leg off. Okay, so you have to reconcile that atosh on the first one. Here we go, and you try to keep doing that. Okay, and then, but there's a gap after the atosha and the ski. So you're waiting like Kihon. Do you get it? You're going to reconcile that as you drop your center in the ukemi, and you're trying to get up and get out. Okay? A little better, but the first atosh sucked. And you could have got her on that sword. Better. Keep going. You try to get her with the sword by freeing it. Good. She got you. Do you understand? Rain got you. Okay? Because you moved in too far. You moved into her mind. Yep, got your leg again. Or you could have stood up on the end, okay? Good. Okay, so we'll watch again. We'll watch this one. This is good. Just the same thing. He's keeping the offense. The sword never gets out. You see, it's shut down right at its source. Good. We'll switch roles. And so you see, there's no atosh. Okay, she's rushing the ski. And the mind got stuck on the sword. On his cut came, do you see? Do you understand? She looked at it even. She looked at the sword. And your mind got stuck on the sword. Okay, but slow is it? So I can't slow down like Kihon. Do you understand? You can just take advantage of it. Good. He's beating her on the attack. Okay, so your instinct, because you're dichotomous, is to speed up your makiatosh. Do you get it? And again, that's incorrect. Slow down his kirigaesh. So you have to increase the first otosh. Okay? Good. And the mind has to be fluid. It can't be stuck on the increased otosh. Better? And he's still not being checked out because you're slurring to the ski. And you're counting coup. You're tagging shark fins. Okay? That ski's not going to hurt anyone because you're just doing your arms. Hey. Look at me, I'm the threat.
Yes.
You see? I hit you. Okay? So my mind is already on. I'm not doing forms. You see? So try to observe how my body-mind changes, okay? Oh, I'm just talking here. This first mind aspect, talking here, talking here, talking here. And you'll feel it. She'll feel it too. So you see, there's no atosh. Okay? So I don't have to take a kemi. Do you get it? No, I'm just sitting there. Okay? So we'll switch. In Kihon, I have to take a kemi because I have a prescribed role. In Intensified Kihon, I only take a kemi to reconcile yin and yang. If you don't have enough yang, it's reconciled. Right? No, not here. Intact the center. You see? You see it. You want to go fast, but that's wrong. Go full. Okay? Attack the center. Start. You understand? Okay, so I'm going to let her pass that. Same exact thing. You see? I'll let her pass this one. So just like if I'm here and I'm going to fight you, I want that fist to be fast. Okay? So, boom. You see? I can put you in my hand. You understand? But it's not this. Drop. Do you see that? And then she's not taking your kemi because she has to. I mean, because she's prescribed. It's because she has to. I mean, that's intensified kihon, okay?